I want to approach it, Dan, along the same lane, kind of a parallel lane to what you're discussing. But, first off, I want to start asking the question, what is a drill? And, if you follow the exercise design format, a drill is really something that we use to test one or maybe two components of a plan. Right. And usually a drill follows some type of training or orientation as you move up the chain and make sure everybody's on the same page and is aware of the plan, that sort of thing. But what happened here with putting a live actor into play into an already live situation, that being the school, they really turned a corner from drill to a functional exercise. And a functional exercise is something you get to after you've done the groundwork of orientations or trainings and drills, looking at smaller components. When you put together a functional exercise, you're testing several components, if not your entire plan. And I really do think, although it's a matter of semantics with terminology, I really do think they put together a functional exercise. Now, functional exercises are designed to test plans. And there's certainly a training and educational component to them, but you don't get to that point without doing a good bit of foundational work. And it seems like if that work was done, that it really wasn't, the lessons really weren't learned to put somebody into that type of environment. Now, certainly, I agree with you when you put that kind of stress on school-age kids. And again, I'm not exactly sure. I think this is an elementary school. So, the age group that you're dealing with is certainly impressionable. And absolutely. It's something you got to be concerned about. Had you done this with an older school group, depending on where the school district was, we would be talking additional safety concerns. Who in that school building and the student population may be carrying a weapon or firearm. And we've seen this this group protective or herd mentality take place on things like airlines, where people get out of their seat and try to do something crazy like bash in the cockpit door, and the group on the airline herds together and mobs the individual. Now, supposing something of that nature had happened, and you get a group of high school students that take down this actor or perpetrator, or heaven forbid, somebody's actually carrying a weapon and shoots the guy thinking it's a real thing. So as far as the safety aspect goes, I don't think that this exercise was very appropriate. From a exercise design standpoint, now, not having seen any of the guides or the programs or anything they put together, I really can't comment other than to say it seems like they jumped a couple levels to go to this full scale or this functional exercise. Now, actually, Dan, one of the things I wanted to mention with you, first of all, we know the impact and the potentials of active shooters and open targets or soft targets. Remember, soft targets versus hard targets. Soft targets like schools, malls, shopping centers, hospitals, things of that nature that lack the infrastructure to keep bad people out. All right, they're not hardened targets, which have some level of protection. So active shooter events at these things are huge things that I know your listeners and readers, when they tune into your blog at CISM Perspectives, I know they're asking you those questions. I know they're asking me the same type of questions. How do we harden our targets? How do we get our responders ready to go to soft targets? And I know my friends over at Net Talon have done a great deal of work putting together programs to help responders go. So when someone asks you that question, Dan, how do you get your responders ready to deal with school events? And I know you've done so much work in the collegiate setting and with law enforcement. What do you tell them, Dan?
We have to make sure that they're aware of what is our end deliverables for this drill. And I think you make a good point. Is this a drill, or are you going to really, truly test the system? And the responders are going to need to know what level they're at. I can't imagine if something did go even further worse than it did at the school, where perhaps a kid was carrying a weapon, because unfortunately, as well as I do, that happens more often than not in our high schools and our middle schools. People come armed at times. And if somebody was, again, with that herd mentality, actually went after that stage shooter, then the responders who are coming in with EMS, fire, and rescue, now they have to automatically switch from, okay, this is a drill, to, wow, now this is real, and that impact on the responder is further pushed deeper as well, because now they didn't have that ramp up time, and then that's something that we hear about from a lot of responders who go through a critical incident when it's dropped right in front of them, and we don't have that 3-4 minute response time to ramp up mentally, physically, emotionally, and and right at this point, if somebody again harmed this staged active shooter, there's no ramp up time, and studies have shown that that type of critical incident has a much more intensive than some of our standard critical incident settings that we work on and practice with. So this could have gone from a great thing, great idea, to not just traumatic impact to the students, to the faculty, especially if they were expecting, all right, this is a drill, but all of a sudden it turns into something real. There's going to be, again, as we often refer to those imprints of horror that are just not going to go away for these people. And then what does that emergency responder have to do to go from, all right, I'm only at 50% engagement here because I know this is a drill, but now I see real blood, I see real injuries, I hear real screams, and that can create some performance issues. Unless you are one of the hardest people out there. So I think you and I are on that same page, that this could have been a little bit differently handled.
It's interesting you bring that up, because some of the comments on, again, this is coming from the journalstandard.com, is sent in by one of the Mitigation Journal listeners, Pauline, which again I do so appreciate. One of the comments that were on the comment section of this article indicated that, well, and I'm paraphrasing here, that, well, we don't announce fire drills or tornado drills or whatever to the students, so why should we announce this one? And that's a really interesting take, and it gives me a couple of comments. First of all, if that's the general public's impression that we don't announce these drills for fires or other natural events, so we shouldn't announce a terrorist drill. I think there's a different level of expectation here, and that underscores to me that our general domestic preparedness amongst our community is kind of misunderstood. Now, again, that's just supposition on my part, but it also, if that kind of comment is being put out there by administrators or faculty or whatever, and again, I don't know who made that comment, that type of comment also makes me worry, because the situation here is so much different. I have yet to see a fire in a building target one particular individual. I have yet to see a natural disaster that targets one particular individual. And here you have a person coming into the school building with something that any one of us could think is a real firearm, and firing off a couple caps and asking for a specific person. That's akin to coming into the school because we're going to have a fire drill today and starting a small fire, so you actually create smoke and flame. No one would ever think of doing that.
No,
of course not.
That's where my mental health and even my grief support side is really concerned. Is, man, oh man, again, can we make this too real for these people who are absolutely not prepared? And again, I'm focusing on those students